Good afternoon. It's a great day. It's a wonderful day to have you here in Milwaukee. It's a real thrill and honor. President Manideeds, thank you for your kind introduction. President Rothman, thank you for your inspiration. I love your approach, love your engagement. We're going to do great things, and I couldn't be more positive about our future. I want to welcome you all to a setting that's different. Regent President Manideeds said there's always new innovation going on here, and I encourage you to take a look at the new innovation that's going on at our Student Union building, where there's these great claws reaching and pulling the so-called brutalist facade off. That's literally the name of the architectural style. We're going to have a great new Student Union. Thank you for your support, Board of Regents, for endorsing that renovation to our Student Union building. This hall has got a great history. This is Alonzo Hall. We consider this to be the marquee performance in the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. This was from 1927 into the late 1950s, the home of the largest congregation of the Jewish communities in the state of Wisconsin. It's got a remarkable history, and when they moved on in about 2000, we were able to acquire this building. And since then, it has served for hundreds and hundreds of events, and it's just been a thrill for us to have this setting while we're doing the renovation. Including other sites that you'll see would be in the Kenilworth building tonight, where our Peck School of the Arts also has homes, and we'll be on the 6th floor of that. Wonderful views of Lake Michigan, and you'll get to hear some great contributions from our folks in the Peck School of the Arts. So welcome. It's going to be a great day and continued site. We did work on the weather, got rid of that pesky rain that came in last night, and it should be some beautiful time. I do want to honor those who inhabited the land before us. If you will, let me please read an acknowledgement. We acknowledge in Milwaukee that we're on the traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homeland along the southwest shores of Michigamme, North America's largest system of Great Lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign and Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. I'd like to share, as I always do, just a quick snapshot of what we'll talk about today. I'll talk a little bit about some background facts, some things that you probably don't know, some updates since you've been on our campus last. This is an audience that does not need a lot of background on the higher education challenges, but I will make it specific to what's happening in Milwaukee. But I also really want to talk about what we're doing to address those particular challenges. I think that's not only important, but really something that we need to see outcomes and have accountability around the types of investments and how we allocate our time and resources. And then, of course, make a case for what we're doing here at Milwaukee is something that's great for the state of Wisconsin, so I'll elaborate on that a little bit. I will give my punchline away. I don't believe in suspense. Let's just talk about this right now. I'm going to talk about how central UW-Milwaukee is to so many of the dilemmas that are facing this region. But we don't do it alone. We do it in collaboration, and that's a really important perspective. Seems like the mic is going in and out. Is that okay? So I don't think that's on my side. I'm holding pretty still, but we'll see if we can address that. We need, and we very much look forward to the kinds of support that you've given Milwaukee, and we look forward to that being something where we can help and continue to strengthen the region, and accordingly, the state of Wisconsin. Every campus in this region, well, let me back up. One more acknowledgement. Our faculty and staff, just like what you saw in the presentation so far today, I couldn't be more proud of them. I call their work heroic. I call it Herculean, to do in many ways the double duty, and I think that's true. My Chancellor colleagues across the system would acknowledge the work of our faculty and staff has really enabled us to accomplish all that we have and for why we're here, the students, the way we take individuals and help with their transformation and become so much more impactful in their lives and really contribute in so many ways. What our research does, what we do in terms of the engagement with our community partners. So faculty and staff, thank you for your incredible accomplishments. I also want to acknowledge that what I'm going to say here is actually similar to what you would hear from all of our chancellors. We each serve specific regions, different populations, and it's critically important to recognize the unique qualities that exist in our different areas. So let me share with you the Milwaukee perspective, and this is something that actually is required by the legislature, and you enacted this as a board of Regent policy. So our select mission at Milwaukee which is unique and there's no other campus that has this particular mission, is to serve as the major urban doctoral research university and to meet the diverse needs of Wisconsin's largest metropolitan area. So that's verbatim from our Regent Select policy, and then there's different things that we have to do to enable that are on the slide that you've already read by now. So that's something that I just want to check before I move on and say, this is a really tall order. To be a Research One university, to have the faculty where they're drawn from and the teaching loads that are commensurate with that and the salaries, that's a burden. It's a financial burden. It's quite different. But at the same time, to serve an access population, particularly with the students, which I'll describe and talk about some of the dedicated resources that we apply, you put those two together and you oftentimes find campuses cannot succeed in those areas. One camp wins out over the other. I've been here, this is year 34 that I'm going on, and I can tell you well about those different camps and how individuals reside. We've been able to make them come together to achieve such incredible status as we have in both research and the accomplishments of our students and alumni. So let me talk about some of those outcomes real quickly, just a quick snapshot. 24,000 students last fall, 83% from Wisconsin. We have, of the remaining 17%, about half of them come from international, half of them come from out of state, primarily Midwest, but we do draw from all 50 states, and we draw from over 1,000 students internationally. We had, as of the last official count, almost 5,500 graduates. 80% of those students stay, live and work in Wisconsin for all time, and then of the first decade after graduation, it's closer to 85%. So we really do contribute an awful lot. We have the greatest amount of diversity in the state. It's an easy thing to claim, easy thing to state. Let me talk a little bit more. I'm going to drill into that. Specifically, 30% of our students are first generation. 30% of our students are students of color. We have 6,000 underrepresented minority students, actually a little larger than that. Almost 7,000 of our students are Pell Grant recipients. We have over 1,000 military veteran students, and we are consistently sharing this honor with Green Bay and Eau Claire, consistently in the top 20 to 25 LGBTQ+ universities in the country. Not 20, 25%, absolute number, top 20, top 25. We are one of 136 Research One universities. That's out of 4,500 that are eligible, and we're also one of 363 Carnegie engaged universities. These are not accidents. A lot of intentionality, a lot of your support has enabled us to have that. So there's some things that you might not know about UWM. Snapshot, a few updates. We have the largest number of programs that are online. We have 850 online classes, 46 online degree programs. We're one of the leading, with 11,500 students online, one of the leading universities in the state. We also are the highest ranked in the state with regard to overall online programs. We're number 39 out of 1,700 campuses. Psychology is number 9, film number 5, a number of programs that are in the top 5 to 10 programs. It's pretty neat. We have, in the nursing program side, we have the largest nursing program in the state, and we're also among the highest ranked in the country. U.S. News and World Report, we had been at the master's and DNP level, we had been in the top 5%, in the top 10%, and now we've added the undergraduate. So across all those programs, we're in the top 12% or above. So it's pretty high. But I want to acknowledge that as great and as large as we are, as all my colleagues with nursing programs would tell you, we're still not at all addressing the needs that exist in the state of Wisconsin. We need so much more. And that, frankly, is a comment that I'm going to make about so many things in this presentation. However good I might say we are, we need to be even better. And that's really what's critical. So, President Rothman, your aspiration for us to be the best, we're all in. Let's go for that. Top 4% of film programs in the world. This is pretty neat. 350 film programs in the world considered in 2 different rankings that consistently put us there, the only school of freshwater science, and that enables us to have a great position in terms of position for research, for faculty, and particularly with our new undergraduate program in freshwater. I'm especially proud of this because we've not only been consistently moving from bronze military to silver, which we were last year, this year we jumped in 2 ways. Not only top 10, top 5, the 5th, not 5th percentile, number 5 in the country in terms of military-friendly, military supportive, and we have achieved this gold status. So it's pretty neat to be at that rank and then have that gold status. Not, again, accidental. The work of our Military and Veterans Resource Center, Maverick, and the great collaboration we have with the VA and many others has really enabled us to have that type of activity. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is an audience that doesn't need to have a lot of depth on the headwinds that we face, but I want to zip through them. This particular list comes from, most recently, the Chronicle of Higher Education, May 27th. So it's not too old, but here's some of the perspectives that we're facing. An ongoing decline in state appropriations. Last year I shared with you a complete slide that showed the history over the last decade of Wisconsin relative to other regional public universities, and in particular, those in the Midwest and also Illinois. And you might recall how Illinois, about 3 years ago, turned their investment around, and they're actually leading the country in terms of investment per student. We continue to be stagnant and be the low point of all of those regional universities, regional public universities. I'm talking about the state of Wisconsin, so no surprise on that. What will be next year? A decade of tuition freezes. No surprise, we've seen several reports and meetings today. And for the two-year colleges, of which our campus has 2, that has been going on for actually more than a dozen years. So that really does inhibit your ability to move forward and be sustainable. Economic downturn. This week's Economist talked about the cover story, looming recession. We're not technically in a recession right now, but certainly we feel the downturn. And why that's so important is that historically, there would be a counter-cyclical enrollment effect when we enter these downturns. We are not seeing that in the last few starts, the blips, and I don't think we can expect that in the future. There's simply too many alternatives to education. And so that leads us then to what we see today, which is nationally, the latest data show a 3% enrollment decline across the board for all universities. And you might have seen a few weeks ago, the privates in Wisconsin that experienced in the last year a 9% enrollment decline. We're members of several different organizations with publics and privates 2 and 4 years, and I can tell you the private institutions are doing deeper discounts. They're going to operate very aggressively, and it's going to be an all-out war from an enrollment perspective in terms of really aggressive targeting. President Rothman, you asked what it would be like without the UW system, and I go back to when I think about the Wild West. I think it would be about the year that University of Wisconsin-Madison began. Immediately, the one answer that came to mind, it would be 1848. It would be 1850s. That's what I think we would have in terms of the retarding of progress, the way that we would lose out on so many of the different qualities that you aspire to. So enrollments are challenging for us all in a number of different fronts, not just the financial impact, but the number of individuals in society without access to education, oftentimes because of price and other things. Dissatisfaction with the direction, cost of college. There's countless polls on this. This week, yesterday's clip sheets, you might recall, clip sheets from the University Business Update. Gen Z, what was the stat? 50% of Gen Z dissatisfied, doesn't think that college is the answer. What do they want? That report said 3 things. They want shorter time to degree, they want better access to career paths, and they want cheaper, more affordable degrees. Are we listening? That's the kind of edge that these articles increasingly have. Go to the Gallup poll. I've shared this kind of information with you in the past. Republican or Democrat, increasingly we're seeing bipartisan support for angst with the direction that colleges are going. Public perceptions of the value of higher education from a number of different perspectives play right into that. And finally, this is what's nice about Wisconsin. We can ignore this one, it doesn't exist. There's no division here, we're all on the same page. Okay, challenges. Regional equity. Let me just talk for a moment, because what I'm doing now is moving from the big picture to some things that are more specific. There are no shortage of challenges that I could talk about, but I think it's most appropriate to talk about access issues in particular because of our mission. I'll then segue into research and show how those two play together. But in particular, I'm not going to focus on environmental issues, manufacturing, healthcare. We're not going to go down that path. We're going to just really look at some of the things that are happening with regard to the regional equity, some of the numbers. So with that as a background, there's a number of indices that exist. MMAC, the Metro-Milwaukee Association of Commerce, a number of other groups, the Hispanic Collaborative, other groups that have put together, commissioned some of the work in this area, and then there's independent outside analyses. So I draw from both of those in terms of really these data points. And I could go through pages and pages. In fact, in previous years, I brought it down to 3 or 4 key points. First of all, in a grim way, Milwaukee, at or near the bottom of both African American and Hispanic well-being indices. Very concerning. If Nancy Hernandez didn't have a conflict, she would be here today. She's the head of the Hispanic Collaborative, and she's a great partner for UWM in terms of a lot of the ways that we're addressing these issues that we'll talk about, but very, very important, just like with Eve Hall at the Milwaukee Urban League, some of the work that we're trying to do to address this. These are long-standing issues that got us here. Here's a couple of other things, particularly black poverty rate, 4.7 to 1, 49th out of 50th. There's only 3 other communities in this country that have a greater rate of difference there. Our incarceration rate for blacks versus white is 10 times. Very concerning. On the Hispanic side, 80% of the Hispanic workforce is clustered into 4 different occupations that are under $40,000. Think about that for a moment. How do you have family-sustaining jobs when 80% of any particular population is held back into occupations at that level? The final news that came out this week is particularly challenging. We should all be very concerned. Is something that talks about Wisconsin overall, not this region, but Wisconsin compared to all other states. We're the 50th out of 50 states in racial equality. You see this graphically, and I'm happy to include as a follow-up this link to this. It's very grim to see who's ahead of us and just what the indicators. There's 6 sub-metrics that put this all together. It's just very, very concerning. So with that, what I'd like to share with you is some information that puts this then more specific to education and what we are and need to be doing more. So in that context, let's bring it home and talk about the linkages, and this is going to be a very persistent theme in my talk. I'm going to talk about the relationship between education and employment, because that, in my opinion, and what our DNA, what we're really built for, is really helping to address that. And Regent Adams, you're right on. You talk about education as that force multiplier, the game changer. That's our core, absolute belief. So couldn't agree with you more. So let's take a look at some of the stats real quick. Some of these you've perhaps seen before in different formats, and I'm going to share with you first just some background. And for everyone to know, I'm focusing on the southeastern 7 counties, so that's what's highlighted on this map. These southeastern 7 counties include 35% of the white population in the state, 80% of the African American, and almost 60% of the Hispanic population. So let's start with that as a given. Because when we talk about the impact here, and we talk about this region's impact, you have to think about, geez, we have a majority of, you can think about that, and then that really drives then a lot of the rest of the state in a huge way. So for the white population, 95% of the high school graduation rate, pretty close to the national average, and also close to the national average, our overall college graduation rate for the white population. But you've already dropped down to the next 2 columns, and you see where or the next 2 rows. For the black populations, this is, by the way, for individuals 25 to 64. Okay, so the general in the workforce. 83% high school graduation rate, so drops down, and 14% college graduation, not even half of that of the white population. And of course, Hispanic, 59%, 69% graduation rate. And why I say of course is because you've got a lot of migration, you've got a lot of folks that come in from elsewhere, so this isn't necessarily just part of the pipeline. This is what happens when you have a lot of migratory patterns. So you have 69%, and again, the same college graduation rate. You can extrapolate, you could leap logically from this to, so what happens in the workplace? What happens from an employment perspective? And just think about this for a moment. What opportunities are afforded or denied because of education? Why I became a college student, why I was a first-gen college student, was because of exactly the type of issue that doors were closed and I couldn't advance. But for how many people are there not doors that you could have? Now, I was in college in the 70s, and it was very much more affordable. That's simply not the case today. So look at what happens. You don't have to do a logical leap. I'm going to show you the data. This is the absolute most recent data from the last few weeks. For white populations, the median household income is 75 and change, 8% poverty rate. Black, 35,000, 27%. Hispanic, 45,000, 21%. Now go back to what I mentioned earlier, the percent in this state, and think about what we're saying. 80% of the African Americans in the state of Wisconsin are at a 27% poverty rate. 60% of the Hispanic population in the state of Wisconsin is at a 21% poverty rate. This is why I argue so emphatically that we've got to do more about this in terms of education and employment. And I want to point out, these are long-standing issues, and the challenges that are in front of us is that we have a huge opportunity as a state. But if you look at, again, why I showed those particular populations, we have that responsibility, and as an access, with your charge, as an access mission, we really are trying to get in front of that in a huge way with these twin pillars. So what are we doing about it? I've talked about some of these before. Let me just do a quick little dance through these and point out that my colleagues, particularly in the READY committee this morning, did a great job and a deep dive on some of these and talked about some of the others on the next page. M-cubed in the lower right-hand side is something that we formed in 2014. The superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools, the president of Milwaukee Area Technical College, that's where you get two of the M's, MPS, MATC, and UWM. We work exponentially to increase access to college and employment pipeline. So we bring 1,000+ students from MPS onto this campus, 70 employers. These are juniors and seniors, most of whom have never been on a college campus. How to suit up for this, how to prepare a resume, how to talk with interviewers, all of that kind of practice. So it's the employment linkage, but also FAFSA increase. Prior to the pandemic, we were hitting nationally top-ranked numbers for FAFSA completion. You know, we're leaving millions and millions of dollars. The last estimate that I saw was because of FAFSA incompletion, north of $40 million on the table for our students who could be in college that would be qualified. But FAFSA is a very difficult, 138 questions, a lot of invasive stuff, parents' income. So we want to work, and we've been working with DPI, working with others to talk about having a requirement, working closely with MPS through this right now, and at the end of June, we hope that this becomes passed to have a mandatory FAFSA completion. That's just one example. We could talk about dual enrollment, we can talk about a lot of certification programs, great things. Very importantly, tangibly, we have helped MPS increase their graduation rate 11% in the years we've been working together. The point of this example, as many others, is that we do not see the boundaries of UW-Milwaukee as the physical perimeter, the things you might walk around here. And I hope some of you join me walking down tonight to, we'll go through some nice neighborhoods on our way down to the Kenilworth building. You can see what I mean. We get out of this area and we work specifically and deliberately. We're also the largest charter authorizer in the state of Wisconsin. So it's not just about public schools, it's with charters and it's with choice. A number of great schools in this region. Milwaukee Anchor Collaborative, you heard a deep dive on that this morning. I like to refer this as the EDS and MEDS, the largest 5 healthcare providers in the state, Marquette and UWM, that are working on 8 zip codes, the most impoverished zip codes in the state of Wisconsin, to hire more people and to procure, to buy more from them. The collective buying power of these organizations is north of $2 billion. We can be doing a lot more in our city if we can focus on those efforts. So we're working with Employ Milwaukee, or Jobs Milwaukee, as a great provider to bring us together to focus on that. Higher Education Regional Alliance, 18, every single 2-year, 4-year, public and private in the 7-county region is working together to drive at one central goal. We have 3 goals, but the central one is graduate more students, particularly with an equity lens, to get more students through college into the workforce pipeline. And then finally, Moonshot for Equity. I'm so proud of our partnership with Parkside, Carthage, and MATC to drive to, guess what, equity for all students so that there's no more achievement gap by 2030. We use a lot of EAB's tools. EAB, we were the first institution in the state to really invest heavily in EAB, and we've really helped Pilot Navigate and many other tools to bring that home. You might have seen this week another partnership that's too new to even be on here. Mike Lovell and I have created what we call the President and Chancellor's Challenge. And we are initiating and seeding grants to look at the root causes of poverty in Milwaukee. And we want to have other partners. Johnson Control has thrown in on this. We're seeding it ourselves. And we want to have faculty and student teams that are linked together from Marquette and UW and working exactly on this issue. Another thing that really is a partnership looking at some of the root causes. I'm just going to fly through this. These are partnerships that expand beyond just the educational initiatives, and they really show how we partner and collaborate to make a difference. WEDC has been a great partner in a lot of these. Tech Ed Frontiers is that online platform for shorter credentialing. Take online certificates and move them quickly into the workplace for those that are needing to be reskilled in the workplace, upskilled, those that are underemployed or unemployed. How can we move? And this is a real critical piece for access because of the affordability and the way to make a big difference. Lubar Entrepreneurship Center, part of our DNA. You've been there probably if you've been at previous Regent meetings. Freshwater Collaborative, huge partnership for us to really strengthen the industries to really be able to better respond to the grand water challenges, the kind of things that are so important. Want to give a shout out to Provost Britz, who has done a terrific job in earlier, Provost Britz, Senior Vice President Britz. It's hard seeing you on that side of the room, Johannes. It's just hard. I hope you're comfortable over there. President Rothman, I'm not going to say anything. Okay, let me just go on here. You talked about talent acquisition earlier. I couldn't help but think about that. NMDSI, Northwestern Mutual, partnership again with Marquette, over a $40 million initiative. Really neat. If you heard earlier today some of the new programs, majors, and things that have been blessed by the Board of Regents to move us forward in this area. We think it's critical for the future, no matter what your major is, to have data analytics skills. Connected Systems Institute, Microsoft, Rockwell, huge partners, but 8 other investors that are hugely interested in the Internet of Things. So that's just a real quick fly-through in terms of some of the things that we're doing to build those twin pillars of education and employment. I want to drill down into something that we also heard a little bit. If you were at the READY Committee meeting, you heard great 3 different people presenting, talking about this. I'm just going to hit the top of the waves. This is something that we partnered with the Department of Workforce Development on, $500,000 to focus on diverse interns, starting with 100, but it's actually going to be much more than that because those 100 will take either part year or they'll be done in a year and we'll have room for more. So it starts with 100, but it's going to scale. And this is so exciting because it's so aligned with the MMAC Region of Choice initiative, and it's something that helps fill that talent pipeline in a huge way. So there's a couple of interesting aspects about it. If you're not familiar with the Region of Choice, that's something that firms have joined, and we're in that mix. So UWM has said we're going to be a committed member. And what it means is that by 2025, we have committed to be publicly accountable to increase our leadership in the next, we started in 2020, in a 5-year period, to have 25% more leaders of color and 15% of our workforce greater of color than our baseline in 2020. We're ahead of the curve right now, I can tell you. We're making great progress on that. But what's fascinating about this and what MMAC has recognized is that we're actually a huge part of the answer to that diversity quest that over 120 companies have signed that pledge for. So here's an interesting quote. I won't read it all to you, but John Worley, the president of Eaton, he and I have talked about this initiative, and the first thing that when he heard about this is he told me, I want to have at least a dozen. And I've met with him and some of his folks over the last several months, and they're really vying for him. So his quote was that he went to the kickoff event, and he was really excited, so he sent this letter, and this is an excerpt that he sent a note to Tim Sheehy and myself. And then I was talking to Tim on Tuesday at a large event downtown, and he said that John Worley, at a large business meeting downtown Milwaukee on Monday, talked about this program and said how happy he was because he doesn't have 13, he's locked into 14 students from this program. Now, what does that mean? If one company is getting 14, think about this. If 3 or 5 companies get in the double digits, there's going to be an incredible appetite for a lot more students. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So Tim and I talked about having a business community match. And so Tim's going to help on the lifting on that front. And we anticipate going forward either possible DWD or other ways of funding this, but it's hugely important for that talent pipeline. But go back to what I said earlier in terms of the demography and where we're at. This is what we need, but also the programs that I talked about address the fact that this is a long game. We are not, by putting more college graduates out, going to change things overnight. And in fact, the pipeline coming into college, the reality of what we receive, doesn't always have all the academic preparation, doesn't always have some of the cultural expectations, because nobody had gone to college in a lot of the communities. I was from that type of community. It's really hard when you don't have role models, you don't have savings built up. So we have been working exactly on those components, and that's why we work with MPS, why we charter schools. We want to have pipelines that are culturally preparing as well as academically, as well as economically preparing people for college. It's a whole package, and you only get that when you look at everything from an early stage on. So these are some of the things that we are working on. Now, nobody can tell the stories better than our students. So I'd like to share with you some of the excerpts from some of our students who graduated recently.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Level up, 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 level up.
My favorite UWM memory is being involved in student organizations. As president of a human rights organization here on campus, I was able to create crew necks where we donated 100% of the proceeds to refugees. We ended up shipping hundreds all across the United States.
My favorite memory I had at UWM would be the autism social group. It gave me a foundation for socialization and meet people who were just like me.
I performed in an African and hip-hop dance fusion show. Doing that, it really shook up my time here at UWM.
Getting into the School of Education. Student teaching has really made it clear that teaching is what I want to do.
The summer of 2019, I worked as an orientation leader for the university. I met some of my closest friends that summer and just got to spend the entire summer downtown in Milwaukee.
Just becoming a member of the swim team here immediately welcomed me into a family, made my experience great.
I'm killing, I'm winning, like on another level.
UWM has provided me a ton of different connections throughout the city, including the Milwaukee Brewers, the Milwaukee Bucks, and Northwestern Mutual, which has ultimately landed me a job for post-graduation at Northwestern Mutual.
For public health, we are required to take a class where you have to take some type of internship. I am currently working with Planned Parenthood for that. It's definitely teaching me how to work in a professional setting.
Resources, being an intern, and also having the opportunity to be involved in research essentially is what led me to my current projects with the John Michael Kohler Art Center.
Just being here has helped me to get this future job as a software architecture analyst at Accenture.
The first ever career fair I went to, actually, I was able to secure a spot at my first internship and co-op. Like, by the time I graduated, I already had like my job lined up and everything.
What I will miss most about UWM is being a part of Alpha Omicron Pi here. So I really enjoyed the community I felt there, volunteering together, and obviously the sisterhood moments that we had together.
The professors and the faculty and just everyone that supported me throughout my 4 years.
I'll probably miss the class sizes. It's very easy to get involved with your professors, make a lasting impression.
Being able to be immersed in like one research topic, I can't think of another time where I'm going to be able to say that my job was solely to focus on this one particular question.
My advisors and tutors, and I just started going to the tutors like weekly and stuff, and that helped my grade out a lot. So I'm gonna miss like the environment that like helped me.
The community. I think that UWM has a really strong community, and that's one thing that actually drew me to UWM was the diversity amongst the student body. There's so much opportunities here and resources at our fingertips.
If there is no opportunity, create that opportunity.
UWM and your college experience isn't meant to just be your coursework. It's meant to be time to discover yourself.
And you may feel lost for a very long time, and that's okay.
Like the one thing that everyone's given in this life is just like being born as who you are. That's like the greatest gift that you can give anyone.
Go Panteras!
Love that video. Love those students' perspective. Let's hear it for them, please. That's why we're here. Now let's macro out a little bit. So we just heard these student stories. We've talked about programs. Let's talk about results. What happens at UWM? First, for WEDC, for Joint Finance, and for other groups, I've put together these data from 3 different sources that document what are the fastest growth, highest need areas. It's not exhaustive, but these are ones that are fast-growing, high need. They fall into 4 buckets. No surprise: health and human services, business, computer science, engineering science, and related fields. You can read through the occupations. There's a lot there. But what happens? Every year, and I can tell you for the last decade, this is how we've lined up in terms of how we meet those needs. 80% or more of our students go into those 4 high-need, fast-growing jobs. If you want ROI, if you want to talk about over 5,000 students per year, in fact, last year 5,400, this year 5,300, we're putting over 50,000 people in the last decade into these areas. That's pretty compelling. Think about this: 2,000 graduates, more than 2,000 in the health and human services fields. These are our teachers, these are our nurses, psychologists, PT, so forth. Business, 1,500 or more graduates every year into the high demand, much needed fields, and so forth, all the way through. This is really critical. But it's not just about the numbers. It's about the quality. And Regent Atwell, you said it this morning. This is our brand, and we're incredibly proud. It's about grit. Regent Adams, you used that word. It is about grit. These students are battle tested. I've used that word before. Our students' average undergraduate age at graduation is 25 and a half years old. They've been in and out of the workforce. They've been in and out of college. They have families oftentimes. They are ready to go because they've got a work ethic that I would put up against any other urban campus across the country. It's amazing. And I say that because I was at another campus, came here. Many faculty that have come from elsewhere are astonished at the incredible work ethic. That's what the workforce wants and needs. It's pretty amazing. So let's shift gears. I talked about how I mentioned the elements of Research One and how they contribute in so many ways. We take it for granted. I know we have our new Vice Chancellor for Development and Alumni Relations, and she often talks about R1D1. That was an attraction. We had a national/international search, and we were able to land one of the top candidates because of this. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But it's a big deal being a Research One as well as being a D1 campus. There's not a lot of them in the country. It's pretty neat. We're talking small numbers. But let's talk more specifically about what's the real value. Why should we support, and why is this so necessary to think about? What is the importance of being an R1? Well, it's the Regents Select mission. We want to uphold that charge. We're good stewards, so that's number one. The regional and state economic vitality, and I can tell you CEO after CEO who has said, it's not just that talent pipeline. We expect that. That's table stakes. But the value you provide in particularly these next areas, the specific partnerships, we not only solve problems at the individual, family level, but really for corporations, for healthcare organizations, R&D, engineering, infrastructure. I'll give you a quick example. You've been hearing news this week about the alewives. Well, guess who's gone to in terms of why are those alewives washing up on the beach? But let's back up even more fundamentally. 10 and 12 years ago, Bradford Beach was not usable. Many of you who lived here might remember. It was so polluted, it stunk not just from the alewives, but the growth on the beach, a number of things. Professor Sandra McClellan and her grad students got on their hip waders and they dived into this. They got into the water and they did a lot of the testing, and they learned that it wasn't the runoff, which we have with the overflows and things, that was causing the pollution, the E. coli and other things on the beach. In fact, it was the bird scat. And so the Pooch Patrol was invented, and get out of the way, we added, and it wasn't we, but we had some wonderful philanthropy that helped bring some lifeguards. And Bradford Beach today, drive by there. I encourage you, go by and watch what happens on a weekday or in the evening. Weekends, it's incredible. We help bring that back to life. And I can give you example after example. I can talk about what we do in nursing homes, through storytelling, through the arts. I can tell you what we do in terms of bringing people back to life, visual, optical, nerve types of work, an asthma pill so that your child doesn't have to worry about losing the inhaler at camp, but the development of an asthma pill that changes lives. This is life-saving stuff. I can talk about cancer. We can talk about a lot of different areas in so many fields, the bridges, the buildings, and so forth. The concrete work that we do, sustainable concrete, flex and bending. It lasts 100 years if you do it right. Those are our scientists helping. That's what an R1 does. Attraction and retention, I already talked about that in terms of students, faculty, staff, corporate headquarters. I can't tell you how many times we work with business alliances, business commerce groups, because they want talent. They need talent. And we can't do this alone. It's really in collaboration with others. And finally, prestige and brand enhancement. I think we're all proud of having, that, and other states that have that. It's an incredible thing. All that's the reasons why, but let's talk about now the real risks. The risks are that while we earned this high rating for the third consecutive time, we first got it in 2016, we're not going to be able to maintain that without additional resources, without commitment for the future. The types of metrics, there's a number of different metrics, but it's really focused on the number of PhD graduates, postdoc activities, research activities, and expenditures. And those have been declining, and it's very difficult to do this without our talented faculty and researchers. Just to put some numbers on this, we were at about 810 on our main campus a decade ago, and we're at 590 today. So that's over a 25% reduction over that period. It's hard to maintain these particular objective outcomes when you don't have that research faculty growth. Let me bring a story or two together to show you the kinds of challenges that we're having. We celebrated the third time getting our research one about a month and a half ago. And some of you may have been at that. We had a number of elected officials. It was a wonderful celebration. I do think there was something else going on that day at the system. I can't remember what it was. There was a little conflict, but we had a wonderful celebration. We bundled this with our undergraduate research symposium. Really neat to see the posters, really see those engagements. We had two different speakers. Karen Frick, distinguished professor in neurosciences. We hired her from Yale over a decade ago, and she's got this really impressive lab, a group of students, undergrad and graduate. And you can meet them in the summer because we do some real neat honors programs and some great things where students who get involved with her lab. So she spoke, and she's spoken to the Regents before. You might remember Dr. Frick, really impressive. She was talking about how proud she was and great comments. We then followed that with Dr. Ivy Hugh. Ivy Hugh is a professor in architecture and urban planning. She focuses a lot on transportation systems. She gave some very nice comments, but what wasn't known to the audience, and what I'll tell you now, is that Ivy Hugh was recruited by University of Florida at a much higher salary, much larger startup package. And this is just one example, and I won't ask Johannes for how many, but I think you'd have to show per year at least double digits in terms of the faculty attrition because of poaching. When I go to national conferences and I'm on a number of boards, when people see my name tag, if they don't know me, they'll say, "Oh, Mark Mone, nice to meet you." And the second thing that oftentimes they say is what a great recruiting ground Madison and Milwaukee are for our top faculty because of pay. And I've had more apologies. University of Massachusetts at Lowell. I can go down the list of it's just sad. It's just really something that makes it difficult to maintain that when we have such good faculty and there's so many opportunities. So what are we doing about this? I talked to you about issues in education and employment, but what are we doing to strengthen our own case? Well, a number of different things we've been working on. Our strategic plan has 8 pillars. We call it the 2030 Action Plan. We oftentimes have recognized we did this, we started this work in 2018, we began implementation in 2019, and then 2020. It's like 2030 accelerated to right now. We need to start changing. We need to be more nimble. We need to do a number of things. So streamlining our curriculum. We need to get students through in fewer credit hours, but that's hard in an access university when people have off-ramps because they come back 3 or 5 years later and maybe they've changed majors. So they have 73 credits. Not all of those are going to apply today to that new major. So it's really hard to get that number down, but we're working it down. Reorganizing schools and colleges. You approved, as the board, our move from 14 to 10, and that's step one. In the future, I could see us becoming, there's efficiencies here, but there's also, more importantly, effectiveness. Students have more common pathways through fewer schools and colleges. There's a lot of smarts involved with this. And then, of course, growing our endowment. And this is something where we know, given state funding in our history, our goal is to get this to $500 million. You've heard in other presentations today about previous campaigns, but recognize that campaigns aren't always about endowed funds. In fact, it's about half and half. So we need to raise $1 billion to get to $500 million. We have over $200 million in our foundation today, but pure endowment is about $150 million of that. So the other things that we're working on, diversity, equity, and inclusion framework. You've heard some aspects of that in previous presentations, but I would put our DEI framework up against any in the country. With our Vice Chancellor for DEI, we have achieved a framework with specific goals, metrics, progress, and we've got great accountability built in, and we're making wonderful progress. This ties in with the region of choice. This ties in with how we're diversifying our faculty and staff, but also how we're closing the achievement gap, looking at a lot of great things. So I love the metrics, love the time frames, and we're making great progress. An excellent one to mark on. And then our own investment, both base funds and one-time funds, reallocating and supporting these 4 areas. We've got to grow. We've got to strengthen enrollments. I think all my Chancellor colleagues would say, absolutely, this is kind of job one. It enables so many other things because of our funding models today. Student success, closing those gaps, providing opportunities for experiential learning and so forth. Research, underscoring that as an R1, and of course DEI. Those are areas that we're supporting in ways that we never have before. The reallocation of these funds is significant, massive, massive amounts of reallocation. What do we need? I don't think I'd be alone in pointing some of these things out. Well, operating budget, let's talk about GPR funding that supports uniquely what we're doing. Increased access to higher education. What do I mean by that? Different models. Remember that university business update from yesterday. What is currently offered is not meeting the needs of the workplace and of students, although there's always going to be room for the 4-year degree, master's, doctoral. We're seeing complete changes, significant transformation in educational demands, what we're seeing that's going to work. So that's what that means. And then support, no surprise, for particularly our strategic initiatives and the URMs, the underrepresented students that are so central to the future of this state. Capital budget, you're going to hear a presentation next that's going to talk about, in particular, replacing and renovating buildings that are aligned with STEM, healthcare, other high-demand areas. That's what we're trying to do. Many of our buildings go back to, they're beautiful buildings in many ways if you walk around campus, but a lot of them go back to the turn of the century. This was down in Women's College, and a lot of those buildings need much more than renovation. What you see at the Student Union building today, that's just another example. So, to wrap up, thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for being the supporters that you have been for us for so long. A few final thoughts. Because of the legislature's requirements, because of your policy, what you expect from us, our select mission does require something that's unique. There's no other campus that is asked to do what we do. We serve Milwaukee, but the larger region in particular, which is the largest metro location and also the state's most prominent economic hub. I did state earlier, and I want to come back to this and embellish it a little bit, the UWM is centrally important to address the dilemmas facing this region. How else are we going to address the equity issues? The fact that this state is ranked this week as the bottom. You've heard me say many times before, in high school we have the greatest achievement gap. We're about the 40th. For black and white high school achievement, we have the greatest gap. For Hispanic, it's in close to 40th state out of 50. Well, now it's even bigger. It's more profound. It's across all education is what the report this week shows. So we're not making the headway that we need to be making. I argue there's 3 key reasons for that in this conversation, and they really focus on talent, innovation, and those twin pillars of education and employment. On the talent front, we're the largest provider of talent with the largest population of diverse students by far in this region, with 80% of our graduates entering fast growth, high demand areas. The talent shortage, if we don't face it, is holding Wisconsin back. Ask any employer. I wrote an article when I was the chair of HERA for several years, and the opening article was talking about ask 9 out of 10 CEOs, because we interact with a lot of CEOs, and they'll tell you talent is their shortage. And people like the article, but then I'd get this quip, who is that one CEO? Who doesn't need talent? Think about this for all of you as employers. Who isn't in line and really trying desperately? We can help overcome those shortages if we are smart and if we make the types of investments and overcome those shortages in nursing and healthcare, computer science, engineering, architecture, business, and so many other high-demand fields. Second point, innovation. We respond enthusiastically. It is our DNA. We love challenges. That's what this is about. As an R1, who we are, why we've been able to attract and retain the people that we have, we like doing this. We love innovation around manufacturing, healthcare, environmental, infrastructure, business, arts, and social science. I was on a bike ride early this morning, and I was with a fellow who is a physician. He's the chief medical officer at Aurora and Grafton, and he was talking about how Advocate Aurora, and he was talking about how one of our professors, Parush Papatla, some of you heard him on Ready, he was a featured speaker for this group of folks who get together and want to hear what's happening, what are the innovative things. And he was just blown away with the quality of the faculty, focusing on innovation, the things that we're doing with others to address. Let me ask you this. What region in this country or in this world is thriving economically that does not have at its center a research university? I defy you, I challenge you to try and find one. Go to Route 128 in Boston. You've got droves of universities. We call it the Silicon Valley today. My mother grew up in the Bay Area. It was not known as the Silicon Valley. Stanford was the investment that was made that became the wellspring. Austin, Texas today. Cimatech, some of you may remember, 10 $1 million endowments started what has become a huge tech center. Go to Berlin, go to Stockholm. These are incredible places that are thriving, not just regionally, but globally because of research universities. When we talk about innovation, look at what's happening in Madison. Incredible innovation. So many firms, so many organizations. This is, if we could build even that type of infrastructure closer to that, think about what we could do. Perhaps that's why I have a letter from many members of the MMAC, 56 specifically, the presidents and CEOs of the leading firms in the state that are in support of a direction that would really be powerful if we can continue to strengthen what we're trying to move forward to. Similarly, Greater Milwaukee Committee, a letter from the board endorsing what we're doing. Hispanic Collaborative, they want to see more support. So these are critical things to help drive innovation in this region. And finally, those twin pillars of education and employment. Think about the plight and the standing of so many in our community. So many that have been left behind. I just saw yesterday, I got it too late to bring it in. It says interactive link. It would be great. It shows a heat map of the north side and the south side of Milwaukee, where there's economic, where there's unemployment, where all these different indicators. And it is really underscoring this point that I've made so many times. There's two Milwaukees. There are absolutely two Milwaukees, and that means there's two Wisconsins. And I bet that every single urban environment in the state of Wisconsin, in Green Bay, we could say the same thing. Certainly in Kenosha and Racine, we can say the same things. Even in Madison, there's a lot of individuals left behind that we're not addressing a lot of those needs. And so I think this is really a system call. It's the abject poverty. It's the inaccessibility of healthcare, inadequate housing. You heard some numbers about our students today. 51% of our students that have housing insecurity. Incredible numbers around food insecurity. This is the world that we're in. But we, with additional support, can increase the educational attainment, which I'm absolutely convinced is the door opener. It's the life transformation through certificates, 2-year degrees, bachelor's and beyond, which really opens the door, access to quality of lives that so many in our population deserve. So we also know that as Milwaukee goes, so goes the state. So I stand here recognizing that. So it's really with our partners across the UW system, many, many others, that we can have that kind of impact. We can strengthen families, communities in the state of Wisconsin. So I'm going to end with 2 questions. If not here, where? If not now, when? And of course, I have to answer questions too, so I'll offer a suggestion. My ask is that as we engage in our strategic planning process, that we continue to recognize the types of needs that I've stressed here, really across the system, and recognize what we can and have these responsibilities to do. But we also consider an investment in Milwaukee that is commensurate with what we've been asked to do. So that's what the region and the state so clearly need. And with that, I thank you again, and I'm happy to take any questions that you've got.
Chancellor, Regent Jones. Thank you for that presentation, Chancellor. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I will. In your view, do you feel that there's an acceptable level of support at the system level for your initiatives to better serve the underserved community?
Well, the question was, is there adequate level of support from the system level to fulfill what we need? I think we'd all value more resources. I completely recognize that there's a pie, and that pie has been shrinking, and it's very difficult to advance us without also advancing others. So I think we need some creative, innovative solutions, some great ways for us to move forward. We'd certainly benefit, and I'll say this, we could advance so much further faster with additional resources. So it's a question of how much do we want to realize. The other way of looking at this is I think we are imperiled from a Research One perspective. I think it's going to be challenging to continue to maintain that status at the current level of resources.
Thank you for the answer. And I can't speak for the entire board, of course, but I know that there's tremendous support for your initiative to better serve the underserved community. And it's not something that we're going to forget about.
Right. Thank you.
Chancellor Mone, again, thank you. And throughout the day, I know intentionally, throughout the committees that have been meeting, there's been kind of a layered approach of this is what we need for the education side, this is what we need for capital planning. We heard that with Regent Rye in our committee. In business and finance, we heard about some of the critical needs you have. And you've given us a lot of information, a lot of statistics. This is all funneling into the strategic planning process. I want you to know we hear you. We hear you. A couple of other kind of macro points. 1956. That's when this university was founded. 2015. That's when you achieved R1 status. We're not in these seats for very long, but you all have the opportunity to be part of a legacy. And the legacy is to create another great R1 institution in the state of Wisconsin now. Think about Michigan, North Carolina, Florida, Iowa, Georgia, and Texas. Where are employers going? Why do they go to Texas? They have University of Texas, and they got Texas A&M. Why do they go to North Carolina? UNC, North Carolina State. Michigan, give me a break. University of Michigan, Michigan State. Florida, University of Florida, Florida State. These are not accidents. States, and we need help from our state partners, and we need to make a very explicit ask of our state partners in the legislature. You're going to do more with the business community. You've already planted the seeds for that. And for those of you not in the Milwaukee region, let's talk through this as we're doing through strategic planning, because there's an opportunity here to have all those tentacles between the business community and a strong university that needs to get stronger as an R1. Florida, we talk about Bucky's Promise. Do you know how many successful families in Florida basically say, Johnny, Sally, you're going to the University of Florida or you're going to Florida State because you've achieved a certain grade point, it's an excellent school, maybe you'll go to graduate school, maybe you'll do something else, but your taxpayers are funding your education. Is Florida growing? I think they are. So these are macro public policy issues that I'm just urging my colleagues to think about. Let's have a great discussion as we go into strategic planning, and let's do something now, and you all will have even a prouder legacy as a regent. We can do this. I know we can do this. There's a great collective spirit. There's a lot of people leaning in on this issue. I respect all of you, but we've got to move and we've got to act, and we have to speak with one voice, and we got to convince a few different constituencies to do this. We can do this. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Regent Bechtel. Regent Cologne.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. I just want to provide some insights of what I heard through you and earlier, and just generally speaking with regards to the opportunities and challenges in Milwaukee. First, the fact that MMAC and the Greater Milwaukee Committee have signed letters of support to try to get more resources for the UW-Milwaukee. More specifically, they need a workforce. And more specifically than that, they need a diverse workforce. And the diversity that we can bring, that pipeline of individuals that UW-Milwaukee can bring, can do like no other institution in the state. We talked about a lot, UW or Milwaukee is the economic engine of the state. As we grow, the rest of the state will grow along with it. Another way of looking at it, if we continue to disinvest in the largest metropolitan area in the state, that's going to have a negative impact as well. You know, we talked about research and how important that is, and along with research comes innovation. To be able to solve some of our biggest problems that we have, many of which exist in this region, such as education, and the racial and ethnic disparities that exist within that. Healthcare, same thing. Poverty, like no other region in the state. The criminal justice system. Again, all of these things are really big issues that require research innovation, again, like I think UW-Milwaukee can provide like no one else. The fact that we are a Research One institution, I don't think any of us want to be sitting around this table and say we are no longer a Research One institution because we haven't focused on this the way it needs to be from a resource perspective. 30% of first-generation students. I also learned this morning that 40% of the individuals that come to UWM have housing insecurity. 40%. 51 to 58% have food insecurity. Individuals that are coming to UW-Milwaukee. This lack of investment leads to us being the last in the country in racial equality. So it really shows that these are challenges. This is a reality, and this is going to require some additional investments and resources in order for us to be able to overcome those challenges. You know, an investment in Milwaukee is an investment, a great return on investment. You know, I heard that 85% of the individuals that graduate from this great institution stay in the state at least for 12 years. We're investing in them, they're staying in here, and that's an investment in the state. 80% of these individuals that are graduating from UW-Milwaukee are entering these high-demand jobs. Jobs that MMAC is asking for, jobs that the Greater Milwaukee Committee needs. So I just wanted to share those insights and to say that I also believe that Milwaukee does need a strategic focus and priority. And when we do that, the rest of the state is going to benefit in a positive way. I also want to say, though, that this is very complex. And this is not to take away from the rest of the state or any of the individual campuses around the state who do an absolutely outstanding job as well. We got to find resources for them as well so that they can prosper and excel and continue to do the great job that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Malone.
The honor last year of joining this board, and at my first meeting, you all heard about how much I love this place. And I really do love this place. At lunch, I had a chance to walk around the entire central campus, and it reminded me how much I love this place. But it's not my love that I was placed on this board for. Our job as board members, three of the most significant jobs any board has is, as Jay would say, to hire and hopefully never fire the president. And being a president, I would say that too. Number two, to help management drive a strategic plan in the creation of it. And the third most important duty is to tie those two things together, specifically the strategic plan to the budget, which we're about to do. So my comments today have nothing to do really about my love for the campus, but my job as a regent. If we truly believe the strategic initiative of an R1 school that is also an access school and the uniqueness of it, our budgetary comments must reflect that. And that's not an easy comment to make because the pie has shrunk, and it does mean that it's a redistribution of assets. But at the same time, if we're all going to sit around this table, and there's other people here who love UWM, but if we're going to sit around the table as board members and understand our fiduciary duty and why we're placed here, if we're going to say that our strategy here is to support an R1 campus that is also an access campus, our budget discussions must reflect that today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other regents? Regent Weatherly. Well, let's hope this works. I've been on the board with this meeting 2 years and 1 meeting. And in those 2 years, we spend a lot of time about thinking about, learning about how do we do a better job with DEI? How do we do a better job with first-generation students? How do we do a better job moving someone that's a high school graduate to a college graduate to someone getting an advanced degree? And how do we help the businesses in the state of Wisconsin go from a startup in a garage to a 50-person company, a 50-person company, to a 500-person company, and then to an Inc. 500 company? However, Milwaukee is where I think we can have the most effect on these things that we talk about. When within 30 miles of here is where the most potential students of colors are, first-generation students, students that would benefit from additional education, going from high school to college, college to grad school, or adding incremental badges, micro degrees, et cetera. And it's where we have the most companies, both large and small. So just as Regent Rye said, I think we need to have our budget reflect the opportunities that we see within 30 miles of UWM, and also what we say we care about, at least what I've seen the last 2 years. And finally, just to pick up on what Regent Bechtel said, the longest anyone serves here, well, the exception of Regent Menydeeds, is 7 years, unless you get lucky and you're appointed a second time. So if we make the decision to make an investment in UWM, we will not be around here long enough to see the fruits of that. But I am also reminded that Becky Blank, in her farewell address, quoting Daniel Patrick Moynihan, said, how do you build a great city? It's simple. You build a great university and wait 100 years. I would like to riff off of that and say, we already have a good university in UWM. We are only 20, 30 years away from a great university if we make those investments now. So I would encourage this board to look very closely at how we fund UWM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other regions? I'd like to say this. We've had our Milwaukee Regents and Regents who have great ties and love for this campus speak with passion to tell us what their thoughts were and what their objectives are. And believe me, we really haven't had conversations like this on this board up until this past several months. And so I'm encouraged by that. I don't know whether or not we could have been able to speak in this way before this last year. And that's because we've all come together to respect each other, get to know each other, and see where we're coming from. New Regents, you can see these people are highly respected, successful people just as you are, and they want to do the right thing. But it's going to take a lot of hard work to get us there. And we have to be willing to do that, to put the time in, the effort, the thought. At the same time, while we're trying to elevate this campus, we are going to be trying to elevate the other campuses in the system. We're not trying to take away from any one campus to benefit another campus. That's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to elevate the entire system. And I believe that with our chancellors, with the people at the system, and people sitting around this table, we'll be able to make that happen. I really do believe that, and it's something that we have to commit ourselves to doing. So thank you for those comments, heartfelt, for this campus which you love so much and which we all respect so much. And Chancellor Mone, thank you for your presentation. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. At this time, we're going to turn our attention to the value of a college degree and UW System's role in the talent pipeline that supplies Wisconsin's workforce needs. Ben Passmore, Associate Vice President for UW Systems Office of Policy Research, will set the foundation, presenting new data on how the UW is planning to meet workforce needs